Too many times we see new trucking companies fail because they were not prepared or knew what to expect, what life would be like as a business owner. We want you to succeed, so we are doing a 7-part video series that goes into detail on new business roadmap from getting off the ground to year 3 of your business. The goal is to help you prevent the many headaches new trucking companies face. Why year 3? Well, one secret in the insurance industry is that carriers who prove their low-risk safety history will get much lower preferred rates as they go into the 3rd year of business. I like the sound of that. So let's get in the loop with Luke and get started. The first step in the 7-step roadmap is simple. Know what lifestyle you want. A visionary doesn't just dream about starting their own business, they meticulously understand it inside and out. This means you need to know what type of cargo you want to haul, getting the right truck for your operation, getting the right trailer such as a box truck, dry van, refrigerated trailer, or flatbed, getting CDL endorsements to haul special loads, and how quickly you want to grow, and if you plan to lease on owner-operators under your own authority, how far you will travel, what states you want to haul in, and more. And if you don't know these answers, then you put your new company at risk of failure before you ever haul a load. So go back and pause this video so you can write these points down and then answer them. Go on, I'll wait. Okay, we will cover some of these options later in the series, but if you don't have the answers, find a mentor or talk with people in the industry. Now, you probably already have your CDL, but your lifestyle choices might require a Class A CDL or a special endorsement. No matter if you want to drive your F-250, pulling hotshot loads, looking to get into the box truck business, or being a long-haul trucker with specialized skill endorsements, you want your Class A CDL because you want flexibility in your career. For example, if you are not making enough money driving hotshot, a Class A CDL allows you to move up to a larger vehicle or 40-foot trailer for bigger and more lucrative loads and haul interstate across state lines. And if this is not enough, you can step up to a semi or be a company driver. It's all about options. Now, when truckers think about lifestyle, they're often asking, how do I make the most money as a truck driver? Well, often these options means you need specialized skills and endorsements on your CDL. For example, the dangers of hauling hazardous materials such as gasoline, explosives, or other dangerous goods leads to a constant high demand for hazmat endorsed CDL drivers, which means you have a much higher pay. And additionally, tanker endorsed CDL drivers can haul liquids in large quantities, which can be difficult because turning sharply and slamming on your brakes too hard can cause the trailer to tip. So these drivers have a high level of skill in moving liquid materials safely and are often paid much more than regular CDL drivers. You can also consider being a car hauler or chase good flatbed loads. In fact, many owner-operators have more than one type of trailer. Maybe they have a reefer trailer chasing the harvest seasons across the US and then switch to a flatbed trailer to haul heavy or expedited loads in slower months. With these choices, there are important cargo securement skills to learn and how to tie down loads with straps, chains, or tarps. And for reefer and dry vans, you need to learn the ideal cargo securement for, say, crates of apples so they don't topple or get loose when climbing steep hills or hitting big bumps. I could keep going, but we will address many of these important choices in the coming steps. To wrap up, if you know what you want to do, what you need, and where you want to grow, then all the business planning and money management, licensing setup, insurance, and other processes goes much smoother. So go do your research and learn as much as you can on the trucking industry, on business management and compliance regulations. And best of all, you can start here. Subscribe, watch more of our videos. Go read our blogs at cnsprotects.com for safety and compliance information and keeping safety scores low. cnsinsures.com for insurance information and keeping risk and premiums low. And CNS Trains for CDL training information. There are literally hundreds of articles over the years at your fingertips, and everything is linked down below. When you've done that, the next video in the 7-step startup roadmap is pre-startup planning, where we will discuss costs, cash flow, savings expectations, and more. And stay safe out there. Welcome back to our 7-part video series that goes into detail on a new business roadmap from getting off the ground to year 3 of your business. The goal is to help you prevent the many headaches new trucking companies face. Before we dive in, I want to thank all our new subscribers out there keeping the channel growing. I want to especially call out Rowan. You are awesome. Keep it up. If you enjoy our content like Rowan does, give this video a like, leave a comment, say hi to Rowan, and don't forget to subscribe. In the last video, we talked about knowing what lifestyle you want as a new trucking company. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. There are a lot of questions you should answer before moving on to the next step of your new venture roadmap. Now, let's move on to part 2, where we will discuss pre-startup planning for your business. It is an important one. The choices you make from this point forward greatly impact your company's startup cash flow, growth timeline, and large future payment dates. A solid business plan will list expenses and revenue expected in your new company. Expenses can be up to $20,000 per month as a single owner-operator startup, so be sure to put aside money for the investments needed for your new career, as this is the biggest reason new trucking companies fail. Did you catch that? The biggest reason your business may fail is not being prepared for the large costs involved in the trucking business. So what should you prepare for? First, don't forget your own salary. I mean, you are a professional driver. Get paid for it. Next, there are the startup costs that include the trucks and trailer payments, licensing fees, and registration costs. Third, your commercial insurance payments, which won't be cheap. Fourth, any required data tracking software and services like a telematic device or ELD for your electronic logs. Fifth, be prepared for paying your taxes. Not only are there the quarterly IFTA and IRP mileage tax reports, but annual business taxes as well. Sixth, you can't forget about your daily operating expenses such as food, fuel, and more. And seventh, you always need to be prepared for vehicle maintenance issues. You never know when an issue will happen, so have a rainy day fund for your business to be ready. Of course, if you haven't received your CDL yet, the last expense to consider is the cost of getting your CDL. Truck driving schools typically cost between $5,000 and $10,000, while one-on-one CDL training, like at our CNS Driver Training Center, can cost between $2,000 and $3,500. If you start your company first, there is a way to have your CDL training be tax deductible as on-the-job training or company contract training, as long as it is paid for by the company entity. Have CDL questions? Let us know in the chat or click the form linked below and we will answer them. With that said, there is only one way to receive free CDL training. Find an employer who is willing to train you themselves or pay for your CDL training. This is referred to as company-sponsored CDL training, and you should expect at least a 1-year commitment after training to that company. We have a list of these companies on our CDL job board for the PA area. You can find it linked below. Now, when starting your trucking company, don't forget the old adage, location, location, location. Why? Where you choose to start your trucking company could save you thousands on insurance, and here are 6 specific reasons. 1. Your startup business location is important and can save you thousands of dollars in insurance premiums when you first start your trucking company. In most cases, it is best to avoid major cities or areas susceptible to severe weather. For example, trucking insurance is expensive in Atlanta, Georgia. However, a new carrier can save thousands of dollars if they just start the location of the business outside of the city. 2. Location consistency is important. It is best practice to live and have your driver's license in the same state that your business will be located in. If your place of business has an address in New Jersey, the insurance company expects your driver's license to be in New Jersey as well. Additionally, if you declare to your insurance company on your application that you are going to operate within a 500-mile radius of your New Jersey place of business, yet you have a Florida driver's license, that causes yet another unexpected mismatch. If there is a mismatch, you will almost always see a significant insurance premium increase. 3. Garaging address location is important. In general, living in an urban area compared with a rural area can have a major impact on rates. In a metro area where there are more cars on the road and more traffic, accidents are more likely, pushing rates higher. If you plan to make the changes to your garaging address, it is recommended that you notify your insurance company as soon as possible. Your insurer can make the necessary adjustments to your insurance policy to protect you against possible risks. 4. Delivery radius is important. Most insurance companies want you to stay interstate or within a 500 air mile radius of your business location for the first couple years of business. As you prove your safety history and show that you can manage the company well, then expanding to long-haul trucking will be more affordable. If you are committed to start as a long-haul trucking business, then expect to pay expensive insurance premiums for a couple of years. 5. Employing out-of-state drivers can be expensive. If you want to grow your young business by adding new drivers, insurance companies want these drivers to stay within a localized 500 air mile radius location for the first couple years until you gather more evidence of good business management and safe driving history. For example, out-of-state drivers tend to cost $10,000 per person in insurance premiums for startup carriers. It is recommended to not use out-of-state drivers for the first 3 years of business. And 6, routes matter too. Underwriters also look at the location of frequent routes your drivers travel. Insurance companies are big fans of regular routes as it lowers the overall risk of an accident because the more regular routes you operate in, the more familiar your drivers are. However, the location of these frequent routes could negatively affect your risk as well. Underwriters use road safety data that highlight the more dangerous roadways to map out which states, metropolises, and cities are the riskiest to travel in. Have any other insurance questions? Let me know in the chat or click the form linked below and we will answer them. Now that we understand why location matters, what about cash flow? The biggest reason owner-operators fail is not having enough money saved up before going on their own to manage the startup costs, the maintenance emergencies, or lagging payments after finishing a load. Cash flow is the amount of money coming in versus coming out of the company. The issue for owner-operators at the beginning is not having money coming in for at least 30 days after completing their first few loads. That's right. You may have finished 3 or 4 loads in a day or a week, but on average, you won't be paid for it until 35 to 45 days later from the company invoice. Owner-operators need to have money on hand to pay for fuel, insurance, food, and more for the entire month before the money enters the bank account. So, truck drivers who are looking to go on their own must find a way to start a savings plan where you are regularly putting aside money, at least $200 per week. While on average, truck expenses alone for a new owner-operator is usually around $15,000 to $20,000 per month for a single truck. Before starting out, you have to save up at least twice that to manage the first couple of months of your business. Ideally, many consultants recommend saving at least 6 months of operations, which is closer to $100,000. As you build your savings, you should learn how to build and use your credit score for when you later need to borrow for a truck purchase or repairs. Knowing that vehicle payments affects cash flow, the question comes down to, should you purchase or lease a new or used truck? Well, think of it this way. As your most expensive and most important asset, a used truck will likely cost around $60,000 or more, while a new truck will cost $100,000 or more. To get a new truck, most dealerships require 2 years of driving experience, a clean driving record, 20% down payment, and a credit score of at least 650. Many new owner-operators cannot afford to put 20% down and will often choose to lease the truck with around a $1,000 down payment. In the short term, leasing is always cheaper because leasing focuses on the value of the truck at the end of the lease term, lowering the initial investment with an option to purchase or refinance the remaining value of the truck after the lease ends. I know this sounds complicated, but here's an example. A $150,000 truck is leased to own for 4 years. After 4 years, the value of the truck is worth $50,000. So during your lease, you are paying off the difference in the value of $100,000. And then you still owe $50,000 at the end. Now, during the last 4 years, your business plan would be to save money to purchase the rest of the value of the vehicle at the end of the lease or refinance for the residual left on the truck. The average cost to lease a semi-truck is between $1,600 to $2,500 per month for new trucks and $800 to $1,600 per month for used trucks. Don't forget that there is still likely around a $1,000 down payment if you're leasing from a dealer. I get it. This all sounds complicated, but this is why I am stressing why knowing what you are getting into is so important. Driving truck and running a business is completely different, but that is why CNS is here to help. After part 1 and 2 in our roadmap to start a successful trucking business, you have learned the importance of pre-planning and know what to expect going forward. Now the question is, how do I get started? Luckily, with your business plan in hand, the process will go much smoother, trust me. And in part 3, let's get in the loop with Luke and chat about startup compliance. Well, the government has rules and wants you to pay your dues, but the rules are long, specific, and unique to particular circumstances and situations. So let's split this into 3 compliance sections: business compliance, licensing compliance, and DOT regulation compliance. Luckily for business compliance, my friend Chris O'Mealy dove into this topic about what you need in order to start your new company. Let's quickly listen to what he has to say. Take it away, Chris.
First things first, we'll get you set up with an EIN, or Employer Identification Number. An EIN lets the IRS properly identify taxpayers that are required to file business tax returns. You will need to get this done right away so you aren't going up against the IRS when it's tax season. Remember, you are at Microsoft. You won't win that fight. Now you need to identify what type of business you are. There are several choices here, including C Corps, S Corps, LLCs, or partnerships. But we typically recommend that trucking startups operate their business as an LLC. To put it simply, an LLC, or limited liability corporation, combines pass-through taxation of a partnership with the limited liability of a corporation. With all that information, you stay above the board, fill out paperwork in a timely manner, and you'll be fine when it comes to tax season.
Great. Let's move on to your licensing compliance to set up the trucking part of your business. First, obtain a US DOT number. To operate as an interstate for-hire carrier, you must be properly registered with the DOT and issued an operating authority by the FMCSA. Of course, be sure you even need a US DOT number. This is how everyone will track your company when collecting and monitoring your safety information acquired during audits, compliance reviews, crash investigations, and inspections. Companies that operate commercial vehicles transporting passengers or hauling cargo in interstate commerce must be registered with the FMCSA and have a US DOT number. Also, commercial intrastate hazardous material carriers who haul types and quantities requiring a safety permit must register for a US DOT number. Apart from federal regulations, some states require the intrastate commercial motor vehicle registrants to obtain a DOT number as well. Here is a quick map to those states requiring this. Second, obtain a motor carrier operating authority. The MC number is also called your operating authority, and in general, companies that do the following are required to have their interstate operating authority in addition to a DOT number. Here's Chris again with more details.
If you are a for-hire carrier, passenger carrier, or move federally regulated commodities, you'll need to get a Motor Carrier Operating Authority, or MC number for short. So when you talk to our trucking specialist to get your DOT number, make sure you know what you're hauling around in that truck of yours, so we can have you leave with a DOT number in one hand and an MC number in the other. But one thing we want to warn you about
are scammers. Because your DOT number is public information, as soon as your DOT number is active, you will start receiving calls or emails from scammers that may be using scare tactics to get you to purchase something.
We'll inform you of everything you need to know before we send you out on your own. But if you find yourself questioning an email or a phone call as legitimate, you can call us anytime to cross-check it.
Now, the FMCSA registration and authority process requires additional elements to be filed outside of this application process. The FMCSA will keep your authority in a pending status until the completion of the required processes and protest periods. Your registration and authority can be granted and active in no less than 21 days, but can take much longer based on the timelines of the required filings and any red flags within the application process that might indicate a closer inspection by the FMCSA. Mistakes are costly, both in time and money, when getting everything set up to start up your company. If you have questions, fill out the form below, and our licensing experts will work with you from start to finish in setting up your company. So let's move on to the other filings that need to be acquired during this pending status. Third, file a BOC3. A BOC3 is a required United States filing that activates your motor carrier authority. This filing assigns legal agents in the event court papers ever need to be served to your company by an outside state. And let's hope this never happens. It is required before federal operating authorities can be granted in the US. 4. Know the heavy use tax states. Do you plan to drive heavy loads? Truckers with a vehicle that has a taxable gross weight of 55,000 pounds or more that are being operated on public highways are required to electronically file HUVIT Form 2290. Once filed, you need to get a stamped copy of your Schedule 1. You must file all taxable highway motor vehicles that are required to be registered in your name under state, District of Columbia, Canadian, or Mexican law during the tax period of when the truck is first operated. To complete a 2290 HUVIT form, you'll need your business name, address, employer identification number, details of an authorized signatory, and vehicle details such as VIN and weight. Number 5, secure a unified carrier registration or UCR. Carriers, brokers, freight forwarders, and leasing companies are required to register and pay a fee unless they also are operating as a motor carrier. But what is a UCR? Here's Chris again with the details.
The Unified Carrier Registration, or UCR. The UCR requires individuals and companies that operate commercial motor vehicles in interstate or international to register their business with a participating state and pay annual fees based on the size of their fleet.
Number 6, get an International Fuel Tax Agreement, or IFTA, sticker. IFTA fuel tax permit and reporting is required in your base state for carriers or operators of qualified motor vehicles, most commonly truckers, used in interstate operations. IFTA licensing are required for 2-axle power units with a gross vehicle weight or registered gross vehicle weight in excess of 26,000 pounds, 3-axle power units regardless of weight, and or power units that are used in combination when the weight exceeds 26,000 pounds gross vehicle or registered gross vehicle weight. Right, back to Chris on this one.
Similarly, you also have to pay taxes annually on your fleet, which is called International Fuel Tax Agreement, or IFTA. IFTA requires you to fill out a fuel tax report quarterly if you drive in the US and Canadian provinces. Alaska, Hawaii, and Canadian territories don't participate in this.
One more quick note with IFTA. An operating carrier with IFTA receives an IFTA license and 2 decals for each qualifying vehicle. And as Chris mentioned, the carrier must file a quarterly fuel tax report, which determines the net tax or refund due and redistributes taxes from collecting states to states where it is due. In other words, this prevents you from registering with every state you drive through and filing quarterly reports for each of these states individually. And while this is nice, there are a few states that requires registration for those unique states to file the fuel tax reports. These unique states are Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon. Number 7, obtain an International Registration Plan or IRP sticker. This registration gives reciprocity between the United States and Canada without the need for additional registrations, providing for payment of licensing fees on the basis of total distance operated in all jurisdictions. The same requirements for IFTA registration applies to IRP. Under this plan, only 1 license plate and 1 cab card is issued for each fleet vehicle. Well, that's enough licensing compliance talk for now. There are other hazmat and special licensing and permit requirements for unique situations. As I mentioned before, mistakes are costly when getting everything set up to start your company. If you have questions, fill out the form linked below. And lastly is DOT regulation compliance. We will cover insurance in the next video. First, driver qualification files are important. Trucking companies need to keep impeccable records in the event of an audit, which will come in the first 18 months of your new business. A driver qualification file, according to 49 CFR 390.5, is required for anyone who operates a commercial motor vehicle. This includes vehicles that weigh over 10,000 pounds and are placarded for hazardous materials or are designed or used to transport multiple passengers, at least 9 or more. You are required to keep track of driver files if you are an individual who meets the definition of both a motor carrier and a driver employed by that motor carrier. A mechanic, the owner of the company, a part-time temp driver, is only driving one time, works for a private company, etc. Driver qualification files are simply the driver's personnel file that includes information of past employment, drug testing history, motor vehicle records, credit history, and more. Failure to maintain these driver qualification file basics can lead to CSA violations, fines, an unsatisfactory safety rating, and out-of-service orders. Want more information to prevent mistakes? Click the card above. Number 2, join the mandatory Drug and Alcohol Consortium. Anyone holding a commercial driver's license needs to have a pre-employment drug test and be enrolled in a DOT Drug and Alcohol Consortium. Owner-operators are required to be in a consortium to manage their drug testing program. Smaller and medium fleets also greatly benefit from allowing a third party to manage the strict drug testing rules. Companies should look for a program that meets the DOT's mandatory requirements and look for the following features: random selections, consulting, company drug and alcohol policy support, testing at certified labs, collection site management, record keeping and reporting assistance, and MRO services. Don't know what that means or want consulting help? Fill out the consortium form linked below. Number 3, install a compliant electronic logging device. An ELD is an electronic logging device capable of recording the electronic record of duty status for CMV drivers. In other words, this tracks the hours of service and drive time of a driver, but it can do so much more. Today's ELDs can actually help you grow your business. ELDs offer many fleet management features like diagnostic tools and advanced reporting that can help you be prepared for any audit. With their reports, you can maximize your fleet efficiency and simplify your operations. So to recap, we chatted about what you need to set up your business, the required licensing and permits needed to haul loads, and some of the most important DOT regulation compliance from drug testing to ELDs. If you think this is complicated, I am sure you will enjoy our next video where we will discuss your insurance needs. Step 4 of the new venture startup process is just right around the corner. Stay safe out there. In part 4 of our new venture roadmap to successfully start up your trucking company, we will discuss insurance. Not just what coverages you need, but how you can start building a good safety record to help you keep future rates as low as possible. With that said, and a lot to cover, let's get in the loop with Luke and dive in. As a new carrier, you can expect to pay much higher insurance rates since you do not have 2+ years of safety experience under your DOT number. These higher premiums will impact your profit and monthly cash flow, which we will cover in the next video, so stay tuned. So what can you do now to help keep rates as low as possible as a new trucking company? Well, it's pretty simple. As a truck driver, the earlier you can build your safety history, the better underwriters will measure the risk when they insure your new business. The best thing you can do now are have a good credit score, have no distracted driving tickets, speeding tickets over 25 miles per hour, or at-fault rear-end accidents. Have no auto insurance liability or physical damage claims while an employed driver. Have CDL experience for at least 1 to 5 years. Have your license in the same state you reside in, and establish your business in the same state you reside in. We mentioned this earlier in the series, which you can watch fully by clicking the card above. While these are important, your MVR or motor vehicle record has the most significant impact on insurance premiums. For example, if you get 2 or more speeding tickets or other moving violations in a 3-year period, you can count on a rate increase at most insurance companies. A motor vehicle record is a state-specific document that shows your driving history within that particular state over a period of time. Typically, MVR reports show 3 years to 10 years of driving history, such as accident reports, driver restrictions, civil traffic violations like speeding and running a red light, license suspensions, vehicle crimes like DUI, reckless driving, and leaving the scene of an accident, unpaid summons and insurance lapses, or number of points in states which use a point system. If you have a history of issues on your MVR, you can change your driving habits today and wait to get your authority until the violations drop off your MVR. Within 3 years, most speeding tickets will fall off your driving record and then may qualify you for a safe driving discount if your insurer offers one. Lastly, if you have a history of insurance claims in either commercial or personal vehicles, it will be immediately evident with adverse and severe implications on your commercial auto insurance premium. When it comes to commercial auto insurance, both liability and physical damage insurance claims are viewed through two lenses. One, all paid claims are considered an accident, even if there was no police report. And two, the higher the amount paid to settle the claims, the higher the risk for insurance companies. While safety history is a start, your business reputation is also critical. To build this up before you start your company, you must think about your credit score. Simply, a higher credit score means better ratings. The theory with credit is that if you manage your personal financial affairs well, you are more likely to take your driving and safety seriously. So be sure to pay your bills on time, including mortgages or rent, credit cards, auto insurance, and car or truck payments. Another way to keep your credit score high is to make sure your credit utilization rate is below 30% if possible. For example, if you have a credit card with a $10,000 limit and a $5,000 balance on the card, your credit utilization rate is 50%. This means making sure you pay down any credit to below 30% of your total credit limit available to you. In this example, you want to have just $3,000 on your card and constantly keeping on-time payments. Otherwise, another option is to ask for your credit card limit to be increased on a credit card or two to quickly make that credit utilization rate lower. This means increasing the credit limit from $10,000 to $15,000. So if you have $5,000 on the card, your utilization rate just went from 50% down to 33%. There is much more to consider with your credit score. Let me know in the comments if you want a video talking in depth on managing your credit score report. With your safety and business management story starting to be written, you are ready to obtain the correct insurance for your company. As a commercial motor carrier, there are different types of required and umbrella or extra insurance coverages you will need. These include primary liability, cargo insurance, physical damage, non-trucking use or bobtail insurance, underinsured or uninsured motorist insurance, workers' compensation insurance, reefer breakdown coverage, and more. Let's discuss each one. Primary liability. It is important to keep in mind your legal requirements. Trucking insurance is mandatory in all 50 states, and not having proper insurance could cost you pricey fines or your license. To stay legal on the road, you're required to have primary trucking liability insurance of at least $750,000 worth of coverage. But most brokers won't give you a load unless you have $1 million worth of coverage. Non-trucking or bobtail liability. All time spent in a truck is not billable, but it is insurable. When you use your truck for non-business purposes, you need insurance coverage. Non-trucking liability offers liability coverage for property damage or bodily injury to a third party when trucks are being used for non-business purposes. Cargo insurance. In addition to covering your vehicles, it is just as important to protect the cargo that you are hauling, whether it is yours or a client's cargo. Truck cargo coverage ensures the contents of the trailer, temperature control machinery, and other appliances or accessories that keep cargo secure. Coverage is custom evaluated for the type of commodities hauled and the requirements of the shipper. Here is a list of all risk and broad form policies to consider. Reefer breakdown, loading and unloading, debris removal, pollution cleanup, aggregate deductibles, earned freight charges, and high-valued commodities requiring limits of $250,000 per vehicle or more. Physical damage insurance. Anytime you drive, you are exposed to risk. Your truck could be damaged in an accident or from another disaster. It could be stolen or vandalized. Any of these issues could put your truck out of commission and compromise your business. Physical damage insurance coverage is not required on your truck unless your vehicle is leased. If it is, then you are more likely required to have physical damage insurance. On the other hand, if your vehicle is fully paid for, physical damage coverage is optional. However, it offers 24-hour collision coverage for damages to your tractor or trailer. Collision, comprehensive or specified perils, aggregate and combined deductibles, rental reimbursements, gap coverages, personal effects for drivers, towing coverages, electronic equipment coverage, and downtime loss expense. Workers' compensation insurance. If you have one or more employees and do not carry workers' compensation insurance, you will be liable for these costs and additionally be subject to fines and fees based upon the state your operation resides in. Workers' compensation insurance protects your employees and your business from work-related illnesses or injuries. The coverage is mandated by each state, and the workers' compensation laws and benefits vary by state. If trucking workers' compensation insurance is mandatory, it can provide coverage for medical expenses, rehabilitation, death benefits, and missed wages. Employees filing claims for workers' compensation insurance can only do so if their injury or illness is caused by their duties while on the job and often include a slip or fall, a strain of the body from heavy lifting, injuries that have resulted from an accident while operating machinery, and more. The injured parties must visit a healthcare professional immediately so a medical doctor can provide medical reports to support any claims. Upon approval of the insurance carrier, the employee will receive compensation payments and can return to work when cleared. Fleet owners who lease on to motor carriers sometimes need to offer workers' compensation coverage for their employee drivers. Owner-operators have the option to purchase their own coverage called Occupational Accident Insurance, or OAI. OAI is used for medical benefits and disability coverage in the event of an injury on the job. This coverage option typically costs about half of a traditional workers' compensation policy coverage cost. It will not have all the benefits that workers' compensation coverage provides. Okay, you made it through. Good job. If you are looking for an insurance quote or have questions, then look no further. You can get a quote from CNS Insurance by clicking on the link below and fill out the form. Part 5 of our roadmap to success is managing cash flow. Stay tuned, it will be here before you know it. No, cash is not king. Cash flow is king. Running a trucking company requires a lot of attention to detail. If you allow anything to fall through the cracks, then it could wind up costing your company a lot of money. Back in part 2 of our roadmap series, we discussed the basics of cash flow because the biggest reason owner-operators fail is not having enough money saved up before going on their own to manage startup costs, maintenance emergencies, or lagging payments after finishing a load. Now it's time to dig into the details. So let's get in the loop with Luke and dive in. So what is cash flow? Cash flow is simply the amount of money coming in versus coming out of the company. It is your inflow and outflow of cash. You have positive cash flow. This allows you to pay bills, reinvest into your business, and build a safety net for maintenance issues, low freight rate cycles, and more. If you have negative cash flow, you can try to survive while living in debt and hope your negative cash flow doesn't kill your business. Now, the way you control positive cash flow is to speed up the inflow and reduce the cash outflow. This is what we will talk about in detail today. The issue for new owner-operators is not having money coming in for at least 30 days after completing their first few loads because on average, you won't be paid for it until your 30, 60, or 90-day invoice from the shipper. So this begs the question, how do you manage cash flow so you can pay for fuel, insurance, food, and more during startup? As we discussed previously, when starting out as a new owner-operator, you should ideally have saved up for at least 6 months of operation, which is around $100,000 for a single truck owner-operator. Is it really that expensive? Well, on average, truck expenses alone is usually around $15,000 to $20,000 per month for a single truck. And this can be worse during a market downtrend because diesel prices, inflation, or interest rates are high. Now, many of you are already running your own business, so what can you do? Let's break this into two sections: manage inflow and manage outflows. To increase inflow, we need more money coming in or speed up when that money comes in. 4 ways to do this is to charge more, use factoring or broker quick pay options, work with trusted shippers directly, and follow up on invoices. Charge more. Many trucking companies experience cash flow problems because they don't charge enough per mile to cover their expenses. Maybe you don't realize it, but the race for quick, cheap loads hurts companies more than helps. If you accept these super low rates, then the shipper assumes they can continue to get away with it. But you are the one moving the product. You are the professional. So make sure you know what your costs and worth are. The most important thing for you to do for every load is determine your truck freight rate and costs per mile, so you can cover your expenses and expected profit. Just remember that these rates will fluctuate depending on your routes, if you're going in or leaving certain regions, and more. To calculate costs per mile, you need to examine your current expenses and forecast the numbers of miles you plan to drive this year. Then divide the expenses and profit by the miles. A truck freight rate is a price a shipper or broker will pay you to haul a load. While this sounds simple, these rates per mile can vary significantly depending on your time of year and current fuel prices. The most important number when it comes to calculating truck rate is the number of miles between your starting point and the destination. After distance, you need to know the weight of the shipment. To control costs, you must carefully manage the overall weight loading for your fleet. If you start with a higher rate for heavy loads, even if the shipper negotiates a discount, you will still end up with more total revenue. Lastly is the shipment density, so you know how much room a shipment will take up in your truck. Once you know the weight of the shipment, calculating the shipment density is simple. All you do is divide the cargo weight by its cubic feet. Now, to find the best trucking rates with load boards, you should gauge load activity by origin and destination with load density. This means find out how many trucks are already in the lanes you want to travel and whether negotiations will be favorable, balanced, or unfavorable. Then monitor load to truck ratios. In general, as the number of available trucks rise, rates go down. And as the number of available loads rises, rates go up. And then search high-paying loads across lanes. But be careful. You don't want to get stuck in a region and find it hard to get out without losing money. You may find it better to accept a decent load and have another decent load out versus a great load going in and losing money or being stuck without a load to go out. This dance of loads, lanes, and rates is hard to manage, so if you can find a trusted broker, you can pass the headache to them. But as always, this comes with a fee. Temporarily, use factoring or broker quick pay. Factoring is the selling of the invoice after you complete the load to the factoring company. Doing this allows you to get paid that same day, but with a cut for the factoring service. Carriers then use that cash to fund operating expenses moving forward. The goal here is to look for good factoring rates. Factoring companies often take 10% for their service, but you can see them as low as 5%, so look around. If you are dealing with slower cash inflow, then factoring is an opportunity to manage the marketing downtrend until things get better. However, factoring should only be a temporary solution. So find ways to save and prepare for slow invoices so you are not dependent on giving away your profits to another company. Another option with brokers is their quick pay programs. Depending on the broker and your relationships with them, they may offer to pay for your invoice early, in 1 to 7 days, and take a 1 to 5% fee. This option is cheaper than dealing with a factoring company, but may not be available with all brokers, and they determine the terms and costs. Work with shippers directly. Load boards are not the only source of loads. The best way to find reliable, high-paying freight loads is to focus on your sales efforts to get your own trucking contracts. This effort is time-consuming and often difficult, but it is worth the time. In the next video, we will discuss how to build these relationships. However, when it comes to customers and cash flow, here is what you need to know. First, Vet your customers carefully by understanding their risk profile. To guard against payment default, you should regularly check the credit ratings of the companies you serve. A low or declining credit score could mean that a customer or broker is in financial trouble. So you should run credit checks and bank references. Learn from their other vendors on how they pay their bills. Keep notes on customer payment history, and then avoid slow paying customers. Some factoring companies and other financial providers offer free credit scores and days to pay information on thousands of brokers and shippers. And second, state your terms clearly on both the credit application, rate advisory, and invoices before moving the load with them. Follow up on invoices. Remember, our goal right now is to increase money coming in or the speed which way they come in. However, businesses are often too busy running day-to-day operations to remember to follow up with clients about paying past due invoices. While mistakes happen, invoices can sometimes get lost in the shuffle. If you aren't following up on your open invoices, you're leaving cash on the table and your cash flow will be slow. It is best practice to invoice your customers every day versus saving those invoices up as a batch and send out a week or two later. Then, create a follow-up plan that helps you professionally collect on your invoices from your clients in a timely manner. Simply make receivable calls the day an invoice is due. Work with receivables weekly and run account receivables reports weekly. If you do this well, it can also be a great way to check in with your customers and strengthen your relationships. Now, the other side of cash flow. To slow down the outflow, we need to find ways to spend less or move when the bills need to be paid to a later date. 4 ways to do this are how to use IFTA correctly, set up fuel cards and tire or maintenance accounts, manage rate negotiations, and find other operational inefficiencies. Use IFTA correctly. Typically, fuel is the largest operating cost in a trucking company, and the average truck today can consume more than 20,000 gallons of fuel a year, costing more than $70,000. In fact, due to record high fuel prices and the roller coaster swings in 2022, fuel prices became the top concern in trucking, according to ATRI's annual issues report. Unfortunately, many carriers purchase fuel using the wrong strategy, leaving thousands of dollars on the table. Fuel purchases are governed by IFTA and are subject to taxes due or refunds. Buying fuel at a location that has the cheapest pump price does not guarantee you the cheapest fuel. Why? Because each state sells fuel at a different price and taxes the fuel at its own rate. On top of this, the International Fuel Tax Agreement, or IFTA, requires that you pay taxes to each state or Canadian province that you drive through regardless of where you bought the fuel. Specifically, you have to pay for the fuel consumed and sometimes miles traveled in their jurisdiction. Smart carriers develop a strategy to help optimize their fuel purchases. This concept is easier to explain with an example. Let's assume you have the option of buying fuel in Illinois or in Missouri. Here are the per gallon pump prices from a few years ago. Illinois was $3.39, Missouri, $3.25. Where would you buy your fuel? At first glance, Missouri has the cheaper fuel. Seems like the obvious choice, right? Let's look at the same numbers, but with more details. Illinois was $3.39, is $2.97 pre-tax and 42 cents taxed. Missouri has $3.25, but $3.08 pre-tax and 17 cents taxed. Although Missouri has the cheaper pump price, Illinois has the cheaper pre-tax price. Illinois is the better deal because you are paying a lower base price for the fuel. Then, using your IFTA calculations, you can add the relevant taxes later as required. The numbers add up when you drive thousands of miles every month. Using this strategy, you could rack up huge savings that simply drop to your bottom line as profit. There's a simple Excel spreadsheet calculator in the description below that you can use as part of your trip planning process. Utilize fuel cards and tires or maintenance accounts. Fuel cards are payment cards that can help you get discounts on your diesel purchases from a network of fuel stations, which will help you maintain cash flow. These cards function like a credit card, where you can make the necessary fuel purchases through the card and get 60 to 90 extra days to come up with the cash to repay the bill. Based on price point, fuel cards are categorized into fixed price fuel cards and pump price fuel cards. In fixed price fuel cards, the fuel is determined for the whole week and you are informed a week ahead. So if you expect a rise in fuel prices in the upcoming days, you can refill at lower prices. On the other hand, with pump price fuel cards, you'll be charged according to the price displayed on the pump. Apart from fuels, few companies also allow you to buy additional items such as toll payments or similar expenses like lubricants, car washes, and more. While a fuel card is the best way to optimize the fuel expenses, not all fuel stations will accept your fuel cards and not all the fuel card companies give you the same discounts. To choose the best fuel card for your business, you must consider different factors such as location, discounts, type of vehicle, and more. For location, some fuel cards will only work in a particular region or at certain fuel stations. If you are a local or a small fleet operator that runs in a particular area, choosing a brand or fleet fuel card with a limiting operating territory can be a cost-efficient choice. For discounts, fuel card providers offer different types of discounts, from point of sale and rebates. Point of sale discounts reduce the fuel cost at the time of purchase. The company immediately provides the amount to the fuel card company, which reverts it to the fuel station. On the other hand, in the rebate model, the fleet receives the fuel receipts for the total amount of fuel purchased at the end of the month. So what card is the best? Well, we aren't sponsored, so we won't pitch anything. However, some trucking businesses use several fuel cards simultaneously. This is particularly helpful if they don't cost anything for you to use and you want to maximize access to different stations. But research routes and costs to determine whether this makes sense for your business. Like the fuel card, tire and maintenance accounts are credit accounts that defer payments of big expenses to pay them later. Most cards provide detailed monthly reports on transactions and let you set restrictions on purchases. This eliminates the risk of your drivers fudging on their expense reports and costing your fleet more money. Managing rate changes. Look, freight recessions come and go, and the bull and bear cycles are vicious. In 2023, we are in a bear market with a chance of a recession hitting this summer. If a shipper asks for a rate cut of 10 to 15%, instead of accepting it across your business, take a lane-by-lane approach to negotiation versus a unilateral cut. On the flip side, just because the shipper is asking for a rate reduction, don't be shy about asking for an increase if one is needed. Just note that a carrier might have to work with the shipper on a series of increases that gets the rate where it needs to be. Find inefficiencies in your operation. Efficiency is key to profitability, and your trucking business makes money by optimizing efficiency. After all, if your truck spends days idling and wasting fuel, you won't be profitable. Instead, make sure that you're maximizing your equipment utilization to ensure that you're generating the most revenue possible of your fixed expenses. Look at any other inefficiencies you may have in your business, as they could be costing you in the long run. To find them, analyze all your expenses. Ask yourself if the expenses are necessary and if there are cheaper solutions that can provide the same results. Understanding your business expenses can help you become more efficient, operationally and financially. Additionally, make sure you are limiting mistakes, especially with DOT violations that can cost you thousands, leave you out of service on the road, ruin business relationships, and increase future insurance rates. Well, there you have it. This was a very long video with lots of tips. Feel free to rewind, take more notes, and ask us questions in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. The next video in the series is a discussion on finding loads. So you want to make money in trucking? Well, you found the video to help you out. One of the most important skills to develop in the transportation industry is learning how to find loads. This is especially true for owner-operators and small fleets that are just starting out. There is a lot to talk about here, so feel free to check out the timestamps below, and let's get in the loop with Luke and dive in. The biggest problem when finding loads is knowing the good ones from the bad ones. When do you pass and when do you accept certain loads? With current technology and the excess number of trucks on the road, carriers must be as fast as possible or have great relationships to win loads with good rates. To build these relationships, you first need to understand what the 3 types of freight are and why they matter when negotiating rates. The 3 types of freight are contract freight, spot market freight, and relationship freight. Let's get to know each of them. What is contract freight? Contract freight, otherwise known as direct shipper freight, are a type of fixed long-term truckload pricing for consistent freight volumes and make up to 85% of all loads. Basically, shippers commit to a certain load volume and carriers offer fixed transportation rates. As a carrier, if you are moving this type of cargo, you are expected to move the load at the rate you agreed upon previously. For example, Pepsi knows they have X amount of loads they want to send in the year. They work with their trusted carriers or brokers to handle 100 or so loads at a determined rate on various routes or lanes. But as you have seen, the market can quickly shift in either direction, hurting or benefiting the carrier. When diesel prices or other costs rise, it can squeeze a carrier's bottom line because they are now paying more for fuel on a previously contracted rate. In the same scenario, the shipper is protected because the contract has locked in a transportation rate, giving them control over their expected costs for the year. So carriers cannot raise the rate to offset the increase in fuel prices. However, on the positive side for carriers, if the market is on a downtrend and you have a lot of contract connections, the new rates will drop slowly compared to the wild swings in the spot market. So what is spot market freight? Do you ever wonder why a broker might not have all the details of a load, like appointment windows, customer characteristics, or weight? It goes to the heart of what spot market freight is. Traditionally, spot market freight is used to find rates for a last-minute shipment or expedited loads. These are loads available on the market for a very short time, usually gone in 60 seconds, and are offered by freight brokers. This type of freight typically makes up 10 to 15% of all loads on the roads. Many brokers are often blind copied in an email with other brokers for these quick loads and are in a race among brokers to land the load. So there's not a lot of time to ask for details or heavily negotiate these loads. Additionally, spot rates are more volatile and change rapidly. This is why knowing your operational costs and lanes are important. If carriers are constantly fishing the spot market, you need to expand your load types by getting contract loads directly from shippers. We'll talk about this later in the video. What is relationship freight? This is the happy blend of contract and spot market freight. If you want to win good loads regularly, then build great relationships with brokers and shippers and prove you are consistent and reliable. This includes making fair rate negotiations, always being on time with your loads, and quick at responding with positive communication skills. If you build your relationships well, the broker will offer you more premium loads, help you get loads in lanes you regularly run, and help you avoid deadhead miles. This is a win-win relationship. So now that we know the basics, why does knowing freight types help you negotiate with brokers? First, did you know that the average owner-operator works with 20 to 40 brokers each year? This is because brokers have spent the time and energy to create relationships that many owner-operators and small carriers may not have the skill to do to earn direct shipper loads. When it comes to contract freight, brokers get the bulk agreements for a certain number of loads at the agreed rate that come from the shippers directly. Brokers then often look to make 5 to 15% margins when negotiating with carriers. However, when the market drops, there is not much margin for brokers because costs rose, but their contract stayed the same. Carriers need to know that when working with brokers on these loads, there may not be much wiggle room for their profit and your profit. Eventually, these contracts get renegotiated, and if the market improves, margins will rise for brokers, and there will be much more wiggle room to negotiate on rates. With spot market freight, speed wins. Sometimes brokers do not have a lot of details about the load because, like we've mentioned, they were blind copied in a mass email and are in a race with other brokers to win that load. Carriers may not be able to negotiate back and forth multiple times for a few $100s because the lost time with slow negotiations means the brokers may not get the load at all. Also, the broker may be getting 10 to 15 other phone calls every second for this load. This is why it is important to know your profitability, your lanes, trends happening so that you can quickly negotiate with a broker at the right price. Sometimes you need to be willing to just walk away if it doesn't make sense. Now that we discussed the basics of freight, we need to discuss the 4 ways to find loads. And each method has its benefits and drawbacks. These are using a freight broker, use a load board, negotiate directly with shippers, and become a government contractor. Carriers using freight brokers is the most common way to find loads. For a fee, they take on the effort to match loads with drivers. Load boards are great to grab quick loads to get back to home or use to move to a more profitable lane. Government contracts are a nice source for direct loads as you continue to build your customer relationships for your own direct shipper loads. Again, we'll cover direct shippers a little bit later in the video. To get started here, let's talk about some tips for vetting brokers. Good freight brokers can bring peace of mind by connecting you with trusted shippers, negotiate the best rates to haul cargo, optimize routes to prevent deadhead miles, and help you save time keeping your wheels moving. But with so many brokers, carriers should look for brokers with experience and make sure they are licensed, bonded, and insured. Be sure to read both positive and negative reviews and start growing a relationship with them. The more you both trust each other, the better the loads being offered. When you receive a load, note that the broker is negotiating rates on the back end with the shipper. Make sure the load makes sense for you, and you will make your money after the fees and general expenses. You also need to be wary of double brokering. Double brokering occurs when a carrier accepts a load and then rebrokers it to another motor carrier. This is not a legal practice. Likely, the motor carrier that rebrokers a load is not authorized or in compliance with FMCSA and has become a big issue in the marketplace. The rule of thumb here is if the rate seems too good to be true, then it is too good to be true. For example, if you know the market and see a load 75% over the fair market rate, the load is likely double or even triple brokered, and you may be ghosted after delivering the load and never get paid. If you see these too good to be true rates, trust your gut. Ask for more details. If they can't answer them clearly, don't keep wasting your time. These loads can hurt a month of profitability, and in this current market could ruin your business. So, how do you negotiate with brokers? Let's start with the basics. It's all about your sales attitude. Like with any relationship, no one wants to be called or look cheap, so don't call the broker rates too cheap. Complaining will make the negotiation go cold quick. Similarly, do not demand their best rate. Every haggler knows this. Carriers need to know their lanes, average rates, and operational costs so you can make a decent negotiation. Show the broker that you know your numbers and be honest with not accepting a load if it doesn't make you money. For example, if you know that a lane capacity is high, meaning that there's a lot of carriers but not a lot of freight, then you may want to change lanes or accept a cheap load to get you out and accept a second, more profitable load on the new lane. The more quickly you can meet in the middle, the more you will consistently get good loads from the broker. Next, you need to provide full details to the broker. They are not mind readers. Tell them your actual location and what equipment you are running so the broker can better estimate what loads are near you, anticipate loading times, cutoff times, and more. Lastly, tell the broker which lanes or regions you run consistently, as this helps you build consistency and reliability. The more details you provide up front, the quicker they can work with you. Need some sales training? My favorite book on this subject is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The book teaches you to become genuinely interested in other people, to smile, to remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language, to be a good listener, to talk in terms of the other person's interests, and to make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Not only will this book help you with your business, but any personal relationship as well. I'll provide a link down in the description below. How to use a load board. Can't get a good load from a broker and don't want to deadhead for a long time? The easiest way to find loads without a broker doing the research for you is using load boards. But be careful, they are very competitive. Load boards are websites that allow shippers and brokers to make arrangements with carriers to move freight. Sound simple? Well, many of these websites or apps allow you to search for loads in many ways, such as by weight, by route, by commodity and equipment, by specialty loads, and much more. They also let you check credit scores of brokers, see reviews of shippers and other carriers, and provide a source of additional services. Some of the most popular load boards are TruckerPath, TruckStop.com, DAT Load Board, 123 Load Board, Direct Freight, and there's many more. You will have to experiment with each one, determine which load board to use, how many to use, build relationships, and improve your profile over time to increase your competitiveness when finding loads. There are also websites that feel like load boards, but are slightly different, offering specific types of freight or a different type of third-party tools. Unfortunately, too many carriers rely heavily on load boards. Using them excessively can squeeze your profit margins to a point where pulling the load is not profitable. Much like spot market freight, load boards have a place in the market, but if you rely too heavily on them, you will need to shift your focus on other types of freight and get contracted loads direct from shippers. How to become a government contractor. The last option to consider are the local, state, and federal government freights. This can open more load opportunities for you as you build other customer relationships. Unlike the other types of loads, you will have to first register as a government contractor to be able to haul their load or partner with another company who is already under a government contract. You can register by visiting the U.S. General Services Administration, GSA, website. It is important to note that the government might have stricter guidelines about delivering some loads, such as requiring you to be a fleet owner, that you meet requirements set in the Service Contract Act of 1965, which helps determine wage rates, performance expectations, and more. For some military loads, you need to be an approved FAK carrier. Small fleet and owner-operators with their own authority for at least 3 consecutive years in good standing have 2 options for getting approved as an FAK carrier. First, there is the SDDC's Carrier Registration Program. This approval process for carriers wishing to haul FAK for the military with this program follows clear guidelines. There's 6 steps. First, obtain a standard carrier alpha code, SCAC. Second, set up an account for electronic payments with U.S. Bank Freight Payment. Third, complete SDDC's online registration. And 4, obtain a performance bond. The required amount depends on the carrier size and the number of states where you'll run government freight. Owner-operators and small fleets should register with the Small Business Administration, which enables access to the small business bonding rules. Your bond will be $25,000 to run in up to 3 states, $50,000 for 4 to 10 states, and $100,000 for 11 or more. Larger companies are required to maintain $25,000 for a single state, $50,000 for 2 to 3 states, and $100,000 for 4 or more. Costs will be as low as 1 to 3% of the bond amount annually for those with stellar credit, but they can run as high as 10% for others. Then 5, instruct your bonding company to forward your bond information to SDDC. And 6, if you're not already carrying it, obtain at least $150,000 of cargo insurance. I hope this wasn't too complicated, but those are the 4 ways to find loads. But no matter the size of your fleet, if you want to make good money, you need direct customers. But how do you do this? We will cover 4 main tips. As an owner-operator or a small fleet owner, you wear many hats from driving truck, accounting, maintenance, business manager, safety director, human resources, and so much more. The hardest skill to learn is being a salesperson. But why is it so hard? Well, many truckers are just not wired to negotiate, swindle, hear no and bounce back, shake hands, smile, and grind. However, to build your contract freight from shippers directly, this grind is key. So where should you begin? First, you need a professional website. This will help you look professional. This means stop using a Gmail or Yahoo, AOL, or some other email address that's so generic. To do this, build a professional website and push your brand that provides shipper solutions for the types of freight or commodities you like to haul. For example, if you haul regional flatbed loads, your website should use phrases such as, "When you need to haul construction materials or equipment to a project site, we get it there safely and on time." Or another option, "Finding a reliable flatbed carrier is essential to successfully completing your shipments." Things like that make your website look good. At CNS, our marketing team can get you set up with a unique website with custom photos, create your professional email address, help you create an exciting company logo, and present your company professionally online. Second, you need to create a carrier packet to give to shippers. This next step is to help you stand out from the crowd by creating a compelling carrier packet so the customer knows details about your business, your insurance information, what lanes or regions you can legally haul their product in, and what types of equipment you use. The goal is simple. After looking over the packet, all the shipper should need to do is plug in your information into becoming a qualified carrier. That's it. So the information to include are an introduction of your company, commodities you haul, lanes or regions you haul, contact information, your DOT number, your standard carrier alpha code or SCAT code, insurance information, your NAIC policy, reference contact information from other trusted customers or brokers, copy of your certificate of liability insurance stating what your policy has and insured limits, W-9 form with your employer ID, copy of your MC number from the FMCSA, and a copy of your SCAT code renewal. Take this a step further by offering shippers complete visibility on their loads. This could be giving them login information to see where their freight is on your telematic device or other GPS tracking system. And third, find shippers to work with directly. Now that you have a professional website and a complete carrier packet, it is time to introduce yourself to shippers in your local or regional area that you live or would like to haul freight in. This process is simple, but the grind is real. You can start identifying shippers you want to work with by Googling small or big towns and look for manufacturers, industrial complexes, or warehouses that manage the commodities you like to haul. Your goal is to introduce yourself with shippers or logistic managers. And if you are looking for reefer loads, consider looking for shippers in large produce markets. Makes sense. You can apply this strategy to any industry. Go wherever your customers go and meet them. This is a sales call, so you need to hone your skills on getting past the secretary or gatekeeper. This skill just takes time to practice, so don't get frustrated, and remember the skills you learned in the Dale Carnegie book we mentioned earlier. Remember, rejection comes with this process. Maybe for every 10 to 15 carrier packets, you may only get one direct customer to start your relationship with. That's one more. Don't give up and follow up a week later to keep your company in their minds. As you call, email, or visit these carriers, make sure you wear your brand, look professional, and meet face-to-face, in person, or with a Zoom call. But wait, there is more. Join industry events and associations. Use your sales skills and join an industry association where you can meet business leaders and shake hands with other competitors. Having connections in the industry to refer to and be referred by can be an excellent source of gaining loads and keeping shipper relationships intact. And lastly, find events shippers will attend. Shippers may not attend MATS or GATS trucking shows, but there are many shipping, logistics, construction, produce, warehousing, and other industry events that they do attend. And don't forget those carrier packets, and don't skimp on the educational talks at these events. By investing the time to understand the details of the industry you haul in, you can gauge future rate fluctuations in different regions of the country. And this effort is time-consuming and often difficult, but it is worth the time. With these tools, skills, and effort, you will build new relationships, earn good customer freight, stop relying on load boards or brokers that take a cut from your hard work, and keep the cash flow flowing. Well, there you have it. Every way to find loads without having to lease to another company. There are links to all this information in the bio below. Need help starting your own trucking company? Fill out the form, also linked below. With that, go get them, don't give up, and as always, stay safe out there. Everyone knows that within the first 12 months of operating as a property carrier within interstate commerce or 120 days as a passenger carrier, each carrier must undergo a new entrant safety audit. Oh, you didn't know that? Well, then you must be asking yourself, is it a big deal? Let's get in the loop with Luke and find out. Welcome back to the last video in our new venture startup roadmap series. That's a mouthful. If you are watching this 7th installment right now, great. Give us a like and let us know in the comments what you think. But if you missed the other videos, then who cares about the YouTube algorithm? Stop watching this video and watch the series from the beginning. The playlist is linked above and you can choose which video you want to watch. Okay, back to this video. Congrats on sticking with us during the roadmap series. Before we break this down into a way too long of a video, since you know that I like to talk, let's get this out of the way. These new venture audits are designed to help carriers understand the requirements they must follow to operate within compliance of the FMCSA. This means the audit is a teaching moment or a learning opportunity. So relax, the auditors are there to help. But with any audit, there is a flip side. If the carrier does not have adequate proper safety controls in place, it is a pass-fail audit. So let's go over what this audit entails and make sure you're in compliance. Remember when we said that there are daily, monthly, and annual compliance requirements? This is the time they will make sure you are following the rules. To ensure compliance with applicable federal motor carrier safety regulations, hazardous material regulations, and related record-keeping requirements, motor carriers must undergo a safety audit within the first 12 months of their operations to complete the new entrant program. For insurance, this is the first chance for a company to garner safety history that will later be accounted for during the next insurance renewal. As a carrier, the earlier you can build the safe driving history, the better underwriters will measure the risk when they insure your new business. If the safety history is bad due to not complying with federal regulations found in this audit, insurance rates will stay high. As a new entrant into trucking or other industry, it is required to follow all DOT regulations, transportation, construction, manufacturing, whatever, and the DOT will want to see some established records and processes. The new entrant safety audit is required for any company with a DOT number that is involved in the transportation of property or passengers in interstate commerce, with a vehicle of gross vehicle weight rating or gross combination weight rating of more than 10,000 pounds and subject to federal motor carrier safety regulations. Companies operating solely in intrastate, within a state, commerce are subject to applicable state regulations regarding commercial motor vehicles. So, what does this audit look like? A safety audit involves the 7 behavioral analysis and safety improvement categories, or basics, to determine the new carrier's compliance with the safety regulations and assist in establishing a sound safety program. This audit could be in person or done off-site, where the carrier will upload required documentation directly to the FMCSA's website for them to review. Auditors may request documents related to drivers, vehicles, and general operating procedures and record-keeping requirements. A lack of basic safety management controls or failure to comply with any one of the following 16 regulations will result in a notice to a new entrant that the US DOT new entrant registration will be revoked. These 16 are failing to implement an alcohol or controlled substance testing program, using a driver known to have an alcohol content of 0.04 or greater to perform a safety-sensitive function, like driving, using a driver who has refused to submit to an alcohol or controlled substance test required under Part 382, using a driver known to have tested positive for a controlled substance, as you can see a lot of these are drug-related, failing to implement a testing program for alcohol and or random controlled substances, knowingly using a driver who does not possess a valid CDL, knowingly, allowingly, requiring, permitting, or authorizing an employee to operate a commercial motor vehicle with a commercial learner's permit, or commercial's driver's license, which is disqualified by a state, has lost the right to operate a CMV in a state, or who is disqualified to operate a commercial motor vehicle. Knowingly, allowingly, requiringly permitting or authorizing someone to drive who is disqualified from driving a commercial motor vehicle. Operating a motor vehicle without having, in effect, the required minimum levels of financial responsibility coverage. Similarly, operating a passenger carrying vehicle without having, in effect, the required minimum levels of financial responsibility. Knowingly using a disqualified driver. Knowingly using a physically unqualified driver. Failing to require a driver to make a record of duty status, that's your daily logs. Requiring or permitting the operation of a commercial motor vehicle declared out of service before repairs are made. Failing to correct out of service defects listed by driver in a driver vehicle inspection report before the vehicle is operated again. And lastly, using a commercial motor vehicle not periodically inspected. So, what happens after the new venture audit? Once the new entrant safety audit is complete, the auditor will review the findings with the carrier. Within 45 days, the carrier will receive written notification from FMCSA confirming that they have passed or failed. If they pass the audit, the carrier's safety performance will continue to be closely monitored for the remainder of the 18 months new entrant period. If no subsequent safety problems are found, the carrier will be granted permanent operating authority and continue to be monitored under CSA. Off-site FMCSA safety audits are on the rise. So what does an off-site audit look like? Well, during an off-site review, a safety auditor conducts the audit remotely, accessing a carrier's safety performance and safety management practices by requesting specific documents from the carrier. The investigator will mention that they are required to upload information such as accident reports, driver lists, equipment lists, MC90 forms, and other records. Carriers may also be required to fill out a questionnaire with basic details such as revenue and mileage data, insurance information, address, and other operating information. And these types of audits are only on the rise. In 2018, the FMCSA said offsite audits will be restricted to less serious carrier problems and would not be allowed in the case of maintenance basics violations. However, FMCSA changed its tone during the COVID-19 pandemic and immediately expanded the use of remote motor carrier safety compliance reviews. In 2020, the FMCSA and state enforcement may have conducted over 50% of all compliance reviews remotely, where just 10% were conducted in 2019 and 2% in 2018. Although the regulatory definitions of compliance reviews describes the reviews as on-site, FMCSA said the influx of electronic record keeping and other technology allows the agency to perform the same investigative functions remotely. FMCSA's off-site audits generally take 2 weeks or less, and the investigator will complete the process by phone. Now, how do you schedule the FMCSA's new entrant audit? It's simple. The investigator will contact you by phone or email to schedule the audit. Generally, they will try to contact the company by phone first, and if they are unable to get a hold of you, they will email you. According to Harry Sanders, retired from the FMCSA, the letters FMCSA sent out would be confusing, and sometimes a carrier would operate after their revocation date. That would subject them to more headaches in the form of fines and possibly out-of-service issues. If an auditor has attempted to contact you, do not put off getting back to them. The FMCSA has processes in place that they will follow, and if you do not get back to them, they will mail a notice letter or demand letter of detailed instructions of what they are requesting and the timeline in which you should respond. If you ignore this request, the company can face monetary fines around $1,000 for the first 10 days and up to $10,000, or suspension of your authority to operate. The audit should be scheduled in 2 or 3 weeks so the carrier can prepare for the audit. Now, a serious question. What happens if violations are found during an FMCSA's new entrant audit? If the carrier fails the safety audit, the FMCSA will provide the carrier written documentation detailing the violations that caused the carrier to fail and the requirements for developing a corrective action plan or CAP plan. And yes, I know the P stands for plan, so I just said corrective action plan, but whatever. The CAP must explain the actions the carrier will take to address the violations identified. CAPs must be submitted to the FMCSA Service Center within the number of days specified on the failure notification. Failure to either submit a CAP or implement the corrective actions will result in loss of FMCSA registration. But you can get help during this process. CNS is very well versed in safety and compliance laws, and our experienced representatives know what information is crucial and imperative to accomplish a safety rating increase. We work directly with the client or implementing and training staff to meet the requirements necessary. These corrective action plans are complicated and take a lot of work to complete. Do you have a good safety rating but are still worried you may not pass an audit? Learn how CNS can help you prepare for the audit by clicking the link in the bio below. So finally, the big question: how do you pass this DOT audit? There are 8 best practices every carrier should prioritize. Maintain good record-keeping procedures by keeping all documentation current and accurate. Good company policies by focusing on hiring, work, and discipline. Proof of consistent hours of service by monitoring, auditing, and corrective actions for logbook violations. Maintain good vehicle maintenance records with DVIR, annual inspections, and preventative maintenance. Do not wait until the last minute to get files ready. Establish a voluntary corrective safety plan and file it with the FMCSA to address any underlying issues that have or could potentially lead to safety issues and improve its performance. And conduct mock DOT audits with third-party experts to go through the audit process and identify issues that need correcting. And lastly, act quickly to fix any problems discovered by paying special attention to high-risk issues. If you need help, one of our new entrant audit specialists will be assigned to you immediately, and they will reach out to you, the DOT auditor, letting them know that CNS is representing your company during the audit. It is extremely important to contact us as soon as you find out about the new entrant audit, so our dedicated audit specialist can take over communication and correspondence with the DOT auditor and get access to information such as driver and vehicle lists, PIN numbers, account logins, and more. We will also educate you and ensure that you have the process set up to not only pass the audit, but for future success as a commercial motor carrier. Well, there you have it. You started your trucking company, got all the licenses, permits, and insurance you need. You learned the basics of how to find loads, and you successfully passed your new venture audit. Thank you for joining me on this startup series. If you have questions or want to offer video content suggestions, let us know in the comments below. Now, get out there, manage your business well, and as always, stay safe out there.